Still Independence Day. Is that the one I said? No, Columbus Day. Columbus Day. Columbus Day is an affront to the Native Americans. How? Now, or Columbus did not discover America. He didn't even land in America. That's kind of strange since it's the Americas, and you know, the contiguous 48 states is not the only thing in the Western Hemisphere that's America. It's not even all of North America, because there's Canada and Mexico and Guatemala and El Salvador and even Panama is part of North America. And Cuba isn't one of the islands of North America or of the Americas. And then there's places like Brazil and Argentina and Chile and Colombia, which are part of the Americas, part of South America. Now, was he the first? Well, I saw a program that said, no, the Chinese were the first. They beat the Europeans. They came over 10 years before Columbus. Well, that's a great job, History Channel. Have you ever heard of the Vikings? Because they established permanent settlements, and the Chinese reaching the Americas the evidence is very flimsy. But there's also another group of people. They had almond-shaped eyes. They were kind of like the Central Siberians or the Outer Mongolians. They're people that lived in oh yeah, that's right, the extreme end of Russia that traded with the Inuit people, also known as Eskimos sometimes, across the Bering Sea continually, and neither group thought this was a big deal. They didn't know that the rest of the world just didn't know these. It was, you know, they themselves and their little connections with each other figured, oh yeah, probably everybody knows about this. Now, neither group were great seafarers, as in they didn't, they were no Vasco da Gama or Magellan or Cook, that they wouldn't have known that the rest of the world, but they themselves say, yeah, I mean, it's rough waters, but they knew, yeah, there's land on the other side of there. So, yeah, so the Russians and the Inuits, no big shock to them. Just like the Icelanders, the fact that Vinland was right over there, not a shock. But of all of the kingdoms of Spain, or of Europe, and the sultanates of Europe and North Africa and the Middle East, yeah, it connected the worlds of the old world with the new world, and it caused two great civilizations to slam into each other, two great warrior cultures at least. You had the Spanish, which, because this is after the Reconquista and after the go-ahead from Isabella and Ferdinand to go find the Spice Islands. And oh yeah, everybody knew the world was round since Greek times. Not everybody. The Chinese didn't accept that. They thought the world was flat, and the Aztecs and the not the Nazca, the Incas didn't get into this, but for, those from the old world, meaning like from the border of India all the way to Spain, and from Russia all the way down to upper Ethiopia. The Greeks had already figured it out and actually got within like a degree of how big this globe was. And the reason why they didn't want to send him is because he was making the bet that no, it was a lot shorter to get there, which probably meant that he knew he was going to run into land, because he said, no, Asia's only, so many miles that way. It just happened to be that so many miles that way was a huge landmass known as the Americas. So he probably knew that there was land there, right? And he couldn't ever admit that it was, it wasn't India, because he'd get his head cut off. He just said, "Oh yeah, this is the Indias. This is, this is the Indias and the Japans. The people are we just need to find the actual, proper island of Japan and China, because there's no way the hell he was going to admit it." He himself was a dick, who talked about slavery and stuff like that. But his crew, I believe Bartolomeo de las Casas, saw how bad he treated the Native Americans, so he went back to Spain, stopped being a conquistador, became a priest, and actually spent the rest of his life protecting indigenous people from ruthless exploiters. But it was Christopher Columbus that united the New World with the Old. It was not, Leif Erikson or any of the Vikings. It was not some obscure Chinese sailor who mostly did not reach Los Angeles and San Francisco, because it doesn't matter that they find Chinese weights at the bottom of the harbor of San Francisco. The Chinese brought over their boats and weights and stuff, because there's a huge population there, and dumped. It's like finding royal coins in the Mississippi. It's from ballast. But whatever. But yeah, Columbus Day is evil. Well, Columbus Day was started, as like an Italian-American holiday, because the Italians were kind of like spit on and shit on. So if there's a Black History Month, and you have St. Patrick's Day to kind of placate the Irish, and and Columbus Day to kind of unite all of the Americas, because I've never met someone who is Hispanic or Latino that hated Columbus. They had to already be indoctrinated into, we're this, like Chicano stuff, but no, certainly no South American or island people like Cuban or Puerto Rican. They get offended. They're like happy. The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, that's our people. Woo! And it is. It is. I mean, that's the beginning of the mestizos. That's the beginning. Well, Cortez is the beginning of the mestizos, actually, which is the beginning of modern Mexico. And Cortez, if it weren't, he only had 500 men. Not all of them were conquistadors. He used the smarts of his wife, who was sold into slavery by, or was forced to be a slave by the Aztecs. She was Mayan. She picked up their language fast. So he was given her as a gift, and he didn't keep her as a slave. He wound up marrying her. She picked up Spanish very quickly, and it was mostly the Mayans, led by Cortez, that got rid of the Aztecs, because the Aztecs were using the Mayans as basically as source for human cattle, so they could rip out their hearts and present them to the sun god, so the sun god wouldn't get pissed off. So being against Columbus Day is stupid, and it did not affect the Navajo or any of these Native Americans at all. That would be the Anglos, or the English and the Dutch and the French, and then competition with the mestizos and of Mexico and Mexican civilization, competing for what they all, basically tripartite manifest destiny. Mexico claimed that's our land up there, even though they didn't inhabit it. It was inhabited by, the peoples that were already there, like, the Navajo and the Comanche, and the the United States government said, no, that's ours, and the British said that's ours. And in all of their little, this is Mexican-American War I'm jumping to, and in all of their little provisions, they all had, they were going to protect the Native Americans. And another side note, the Native Americans despise the Mexicans, and they still kind of do if you talk to the Maya. Or the last genocide that really happened was in 1999 in Chiapas, southern Mexico. Yeah, so just like the English were trying to say, oh, no expansion beyond the Appalachians, because that we're going to leave that to the Indians. Oh, you mean just like how the American government was going to leave all of Oklahoma to the Indians or Native Americans, whatever the hell you want to call them. So yeah, that's why protesting Columbus Day is bullshit. No, but Leif Erikson made it over here, or the Vikings made it over here. Really, did they establish any cross-cultural contact? Well, no. Okay, then. Well, how can you discover a place that already exists? Well, we discover planets all the time. How can you discover a culture that already exists? Well, we've made a contact with uncontacted people before, and so therefore they were discovered. It's more like presenting it to. Do you know what discovery means? It doesn't mean invented.